We're really lucky and honored to have three very special people here to speak about the trains from three different perspectives, but all looking towards the same goal of keeping us safe. I'll go in the order that people are going to be speaking, but before we start, we are going to be watching a video, but I'll introduce the people first. Councilwoman Vivian Kornegay, many people have probably seen her on TV. Doing a little bit of a celebrity here. She's a representative and a true representative for the Albany's 2nd Ward. She's really going door to door to help keep her constituents safe. And her ward includes the historic South End and Mansion neighborhoods. She's a constant voice against gun violence and other harmful disparities. Did you people hear me? Much better now. Oh. Do they introduce Vivian? I'm a teacher, so I can really help you out. Hi, second, Jon Flanders has worked for CIS as a retired CSX worker, railroad worker. He's a long-time union organizer, a labor activist, and a social justice activist. Jon will be knows quite a bit about the trains, so he'll be speaking on that side. And last but not least, we'll be having Sandy Steubing. Sandy is a retired music teacher, social worker and international sales manager for a high-tech firm. She was a national coordinator for Greenpeace from 1979 to 1981, so very long involvement with the environmental movement. She works in energy and environmental issues. She's a founding member of the Capital District Transition Network, a group that strives to move the region away from fossil fuels and toward renewable sources of energy, which is our only hope. Recently, she and many other activists in Albany have founded PAWS, People of Albany United for Safe Energy. This group is devoted to halting the rail shipment of oil through Albany. Finally, Sandy was a lead organizer in promoting an anti-fracking resolution for her church, which passed in February. Congratulations. If Sandy can start the video you're going to watch, a lot of you have probably already seen it. It's about 6 minutes long, and it's Justin Nicolka's wonderful video which introduces this. But I can watch it again and again. They did a wonderful job. And after that, we'll have Vivian Kornegay speaking toward her side. Sir.
In the early 90s, the National Transportation Safety Board, known as the NTSB, warned that the rail tanker cars in use, the DOT 111s, were unsafe and prone to spills during crashes. The NTSB has repeatedly warned of this danger since then. Of course, the NTSB has no enforcement capabilities, so their warnings went unheeded by the industry. In 2009, due to oil supply outpacing pipeline capacity for the North Dakota Bakken oil, companies began filling the DOT 111s with crude oil and shipping the oil by rail. No one really paid attention to the fact that all of this oil was being shipped in unsafe rail cars until the summer of 2013, when 47 people were killed in an explosion of DOT 111s filled with Bakken crude in Lac Megantic. Lac Megantic was inevitable. In 2009, the industry shipped 5,358 carloads in the first half of the year. In 2013, they shipped 355,933. In 2009, there was one spill. In 2013, there were 137 spills. The federal government reported that more oil was spilled from rail cars in 2013 than in the previous 4 decades combined. Lac Megantic raised many questions. Why had a train full of crude oil exploded and incinerated downtown Lac Megantic and killed 47 people? Crude oil was not supposed to be explosive. Several possible explanations were put forth, but no definitive conclusion was reached. And then another train exploded. another train exploded. And then another. It is now an established fact that trains carrying Bakken crude oil are carrying explosive contents. This is why workers in the rail industry now refer to such trains as bomb trains. These trains pass daily through many of the large cities in North America: Toronto, Chicago, Philadelphia, Buffalo, and Albany, New York, where they stop and wait to be offloaded onto tankers and barges to travel down the Hudson River. Downtown Albany has been transformed into a storage facility for these trains and their explosive cargo. Recently, a pipeline safety official admitted he would avoid buying a home near an oil pipeline, claiming that was just the reality. I wonder what he would say about having a daycare center on the other side of a parking lot from a rail line where they are transporting and storing Bakken crude oil and DOT 111 cars. Because in Albany, that is the reality. In December of 2012, the very first oil tanker was filled at the Port of Albany with oil from the rail cars. A few miles down the river, it ran aground and punctured its outer hull. Luckily, no oil was spilled. Nearly a year later, Dennis Farrar, the DEC's Chief of Environmental Remediation Division, was asked if they were ready to respond to a major event on the Hudson River. He said, "To be honest, I don't know. Until we have a drill or a review of plans or an event, we really don't know." They have been bringing oil to Albany by rail and shipping it down the Hudson for over a year, and they have no idea if they are ready to deal with an accident. It isn't like the DEC can claim they don't know about the issue. They can see the Hudson River from their office building, and they also can see the DOT 111s filled with Bakken crude. In December of 2013, Global, one of the two companies bringing oil to the Port of Albany, finally appeared before the local emergency planning committee to offer assurances of safety and say that they were prepared for any spill or fire. Apparently they were convincing, as the chairman of the committee said that the oil shipments were safer than your car in your driveway. These are the people who we are supposed to trust to keep us safe. The ones who waited over a year to even bother to comment on the issue. The ones who managed to crash the very first tanker they shipped out of the Port of Albany. The ones who claim crude oil doesn't explode. There was no mention of any plans for evacuation in Albany, despite the fact that the last two train explosions have required the nearest towns to be evacuated. It should be noted that all 6 companies involved in the Lac-Mégantic oil spill are refusing to pay for the cleanup, which is expected to cost $200 million. 47 people died, a town was destroyed, and they all are trying to walk away. And yet in Albany, we are assured it will be fine by an oil company called Global Partners.
Yes.
So we'll now hear from Vivian regarding how she hopes to keep her constituents safe. Yes, sir.
Were those tankers traveling when they exploded, or were they just sitting in a rail?
Some were, we're actually going to have a question and answer period after everybody's spoken, so we can wait for that. I think mostly they were.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to be here with you tonight. It's my pleasure, it's an honor to speak to you again. I did have the privilege of speaking to some of you about a month ago, 2 months ago, at your dinner, so it's good to see you again. I want to say that I grew up somebody that loves trains. I love trains. And when I hear the train whistle, it would give me comfort to hear the whistle of the train at night when I'd be laying in my bed in Albany. And Albany is such a small city, you can hear the train whistle from almost anywhere. So it always gave me comfort to hear it when I did. and I knew that there were boxcars carrying freight going to and from our city. But now when I hear those train whistles, they concern me. It's not that same comfort that I used to have. And that is because of the potential for something that has happened, something to happen here. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. So there is the danger that something that, like what happened in Virginia and Quebec, could happen here. We have that fear that something could happen because those trains are not up to standard to carry the oil that they're carrying. We don't want to see, some have accused us of saying the Port of Albany is closed for business, and that's not true. We want our port to be open, but we want the people at our port to be good neighbors. We want to be good neighbors, and we want them to be good neighbors. And we want, my job as an elected official is to look out for my constituents, to make sure that I'm a voice for them, that I hear what they're saying, and give them information that keeps them safe, aware, or whatever other things voice that I need to be for them, or ears I need to be for them. And the DEC failed us when they first took this, what's global. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. They didn't have them do any studies. They declared a negative declaration without looking into anything. They just took the word of an oil company and said, okay, fine. And we're going to go ahead and grant them whatever they needed to do, what they needed to do. And that to me was wrong. Because if you're the agency that's supposed to look out for me, then I'm supposed to be able to trust you to do the right thing. And I'm supposed to be able to trust that you will follow your own guidelines in doing that. And they didn't. Since we started this in January, the DEC has stepped up and has started to work very closely with us, and they're now talking about doing air monitoring and air screening down in Ezra Prentice, where those trains sit daily in back of people's homes. So we're happy that they're doing those air testing now. We're happy that they're taking some steps to correct some of the things that they didn't do when they first started this process. We're also happy that our partners in the environmental groups, such as CORES, the Earth Justice, River Keepers, Mountain Keepers, have decided to get together with members of the community, do a letter to the EPA, and the EPA has now said to DEC, you didn't do it right, you didn't do what you were supposed to do, so now you're going to start over and do it again. And you're going to do it right this time. So we are pleased that the EPA has stepped up for us and said that they are going to require our state agency to do the right thing. So we're pleased about the steps that have been, these strides that have been made. The small steps, and I think that they've taken too long to come because, as I said, they should have been done in the beginning, not on the end. They should not have, we should not have to be here having this conversation. We should have had to have, all of these things should have had to be done before they started this process. And when I ride down 787, and I can go all the way down to 144 and see rail trains, these rail cars parked out there with this, it scares me. It does scare me. And I love trains. I love freight trains anyway, but I don't love these trains. I don't have a problem with people doing their jobs. I don't have we don't have problems with whatever processes they need to have to do the jobs that they need to do. But I do have a problem when they are doing stuff that jeopardizes us, the lives of the community. And this is something that is jeopardizing our community as a whole. If we have a spill in Albany or something, God forbid, happened down there that like happened in Virginia, would we be able to recover from that? Would our river ever recover? We're just cleaning up our river from GE. We don't want to have to clean up our river again or try to clean it up. Would we be able to recover our river if we had this done to it after we've come so far? Do we want to take that chance? I don't. I don't want to take that chance. I don't want to take a chance in having our river devastated, and I certainly do not want to take a chance on having our community devastated. There are people that live there, and people have suggested, well, why don't they move? That to me, it's ridiculous. Why would they move? There are people that have lived there for 30 and 40 years. It's not fair to say, why don't they move? What would be fair is, why don't we just make this process safe? Why don't we just make it safe for them to stay in their homes? Not why don't they move? So why don't they move is an easy solution for some people. But I'm saying the easy solution should be, why don't we just make it safe? And I continue to do what I'm doing until someone does something to make it safe. And I think that the EPA fortunately has gotten the message and now requiring DEC to do what they're going to do, they need to do, which will require global industries and anybody else at our ports to do the right thing. We will not allow this to happen again. We are watching because we know it's not just global, this is bigger than global. We know that there are other companies that will want to do other things down at our port. So this, we would hope that this will be a lesson to them to say, if we want to go into the city of Albany to do business, then we better be good neighbors going in. Global has not been a good neighbor. They don't want to talk to us. They send their PR people out to talk to us. I don't want to talk to their PR people. I don't have a PR person. Sandy's not my PR. I don't want her to be my PR person. I need to speak for my constituents. So why is it you can't talk to me directly? So I'm telling Global that we want to talk to you. We want you to sit at the table with us and our residents and talk to us for real. We don't want you to talk at us. We want you to talk to us. And until you talk to us, then we're not going to trust you at all.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. As a retired railroad worker, I'm going to take this subject up from the point of view of a lot of, at least some, I hope I can get to, of the safety issues that workers in the industry face. And there are quite a few. And one thing I can say about this whole oil train controversy is that it's at least given an opportunity for railroad workers to possibly get some of their concerns addressed. For years, basically, the railroads have been what I would call a giant in the background. 40% of the country's freight is shipped by rail, going on all the time. Every 15 minutes or so, a train leaves the Selkirk yard for Buffalo and beyond to Chicago. When I was working in the diesel shop, we would hook up something like 12 trains a shift in an 8-hour day. One of the jobs machinists do is doing the basic hookups of an engine consist before it goes out. There's a lot of activity going on not very far from here. Has been for years, about 10 miles south of here. It's kind of a Selkirk yard, which is the biggest freight yard in New York State. So what are some of the issues that rail workers are concerned about? First of all, the crews that run the trains, and I didn't work on that side. That's the transportation side. I worked on the maintenance side, obviously. But as a member of Railroad Workers United, which is a cross-craft caucus of railroad workers all across the country, I'm fairly familiar with a lot of the issues that train crews are facing. And certainly one of the most important is fatigue. The railroads historically have worked train crews virtually to death. For example, a pilot of an airliner is only required to work 100 hours a month. Train crews, their limit is 432 hours. And keep in mind that they're working odd hours, a lot of freight runs at night. It's very hard to stay awake at night. The industry really comes down on you hard if you try to take time off. The turnaround is usually 8 to 10 hours. They've changed that a little bit to lengthen the turnaround time, but still, when you consider having to go home, get some sleep, do your business, and then be called to come back out again, it's a very stressful lifestyle. Basically, you're babysitting a phone, waiting for your next call out. And at the same time, the industry is using technological advances. You've probably heard about the Guru driverless car. They would like to do the same thing with the locomotives. And that is go to a single-person crew with GPS and a computer running the train. And they're actually somewhat doing this already, well, still with a two-person crew. And then they could eliminate the conductor and run a train with one person in the cab. I don't know how safe you would feel in your community if you knew if a freight train was going by 50 miles an hour with only one person on it and a computer running it. But that's an issue that's very big, and both the operating craft unions, the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and the United Transportation Workers Union, which have historically been like cats and dogs in terms of getting along, are advocating legislation state by state to maintain a two-person crew on our freight train. And I hope you would support them in that effort. In addition, in the rail yards, like for example the CSX yard where I work, a few years ago they eliminated train crews for switching freight around the yard. And now they have a single person with a remote control belt pack moving cars around that yard. This is going on right now. When I used to drive into work, I'd see the poor guy standing out there with his belt pack, moving all these cars around. You know, I mean, and that's something else that Railroad Workers United is very upset about and feels is unsafe. And I don't know what goes on in the Kenwood yard, whether that is the case or not, but it might be worth somebody trying to find out. It's again, you know, it's. It used to be you had the engineer in the cab and a brake person or conductor at the other end of the train to see what was going on. But with your remote control switching, how do you be in two places at once? This doesn't make sense. But it does save on labor, and that's what they're all about in terms of the industry. Then there's a question of maintenance, the side that I worked on. And the accident in Quebec was very much tied up with that question. Why did that accident actually happen? The train, the single person engineer working by himself parked that train on a grade, set a number of handbrakes. He claimed he set the required number, but keep in mind that oil is a heavy commodity, and left the lead engine running to provide air to the air brake system. That engine caught on fire. The fire had to be put out by the local fire department, and they shut the engine down to do that. When that happened, the air leaked off, and the train rolled down the hill into the town, and we know what happened at that point. So there's a question of the importance of maintenance. Certainly, somebody dropped the ball in terms of inspecting that locomotive to miss a fuel leak. Bad enough to start a fire. Diesel doesn't burn that easily. So it must have been a fairly significant fuel leak, but it was missed. And then the question of the air. The air shouldn't have leaked off that quickly. And then there's a question of how many handbrakes were set, and with a two-person crew, maybe more would have been set. I can imagine a very fatigued engineer who he claims he set the number he was supposed to set, but probably didn't do anything extra. And all those things led to, it's a perfect storm, basically, of error that led to that catastrophe. On top of that, of course, it was a short line. Now, the Class 1 railroads like CSX, the one I work for, have been very busy setting off branch lines to short line operators. Typically, a short line is non-union, usually probably underfunded. They're only required to have $25 million worth of insurance, which is why in Quebec, after the railroad went bankrupt and didn't pay for, I think, several $1 billion worth of damages that were done. And of course, from the point of view of the large railroads, the Class 1s, this is perfectly fine, because this means that accidents like that, they're not liable. They actually have the money to pay. You know, if it had been Canadian Pacific or Canadian National, which, by the way, is now controlled by Bill Gates from Microsoft, they would have had the money to reimburse at least the town, but a short line, $25 million, out of business, or reorganize under another name and go on. There's a question of track. Now, from a railroad worker's point of view, it's not so much a question of what the cargo is, but how do we move it safely? And basically, as long as the cargo stays on the track, usually things are going to be okay. When it goes off the track, then you have a problem. And from my point of view, I know there's a lot of talk about, well, we need safer tank cars, but I'm not convinced that at 50 miles an hour, any tank car with the dangerous stuff in it, and oil is by no means probably the most dangerous thing the railroads move. They move things like sulfuric acid, gases, propane. We had a propane explosion in the rail yard where I worked while I was there. All these things, I don't care what the car is, if that goes off the track at a high enough speed and hits something hard, it's probably going to blow up. So, number one thing is to keep that train on the tracks. That means the tracks have to be properly inspected and maintained. And the government is totally understaffed when it comes from checking up on the railroads and their track inspections. The state of Minnesota has one guide for the entire state, and that is a very busy rail state, and that's where a lot of the Bakken crude goes. I think New York State has a couple of DOT people maybe. The other people who are inspectors are the Federal Railroad Administration, and those guys are understaffed as well. Typically, they come in after an accident and start checking you up. That was my experience in the Selkirk yard, is that if there was some big accident, all of a sudden the FRA would descend on us and start checking things out after the fact. What else can I say? There's also the question in terms of infrastructure of bridges and tunnels. There are 76,000 bridges in the rail bridges in the United States. Most of them quite old. The bridge over the Hudson over here that you've probably seen, where a friend of mine used to work. I've been up there in the lab tower up there. It's over 100 years old. Still functioning because it's okay. They don't go over it very fast. And there are 800 tunnels. And these are huge sinks for maintenance for the railroad industry. And are probably, most of them are probably definitely in need of some kind of maintenance and repair. The railroad industry will tell you they're spending billions on infrastructure, and they are, but given the 160,000 miles of track that's out there, billions, so it's a question of how many billions do you need to spend to really make things safe. So, I guess what you would like you to leave from here is some kind of awareness of the role of labor and railroad workers in this whole industry, and why it's important to support them to fight for more humane hours of service, for two-person crews, and proper maintenance and investment in maintenance in terms of track, locomotives, and all the rest. And I would urge you to check out the Railroad Workers United website, which you can find at railroadworkersunited.org, Railroad Workers United being one word. There's plenty of articles there about safety and some of the issues that are facing rail labor in terms of safety. And please be supportive of railroad workers. It's not just in their interest, it's the interest of anyone living anywhere near a railroad track. Thanks.
So it's going to take me a couple minutes to hook up my, the computer and everything like that. So Mary, in the meantime, Mary and Trudy, and maybe Betty, I've got all the, those postcards we fill out, Betty? They're back there. And I'd like everybody to have one. And also our pause handouts are back there that people may have missed on the way in. So give me a couple minutes. we give them some facts from the recent NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board. And so I can give you some talking points a little bit later on, but sometimes people don't recognize that actually this thing that they're holding is a postcard. They forget that old technology, the way we used to communicate. I'll just walk you through some background and a little science of the oil and a little bit of activism, the way PAWS has been participating in this issue that we have here. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Okay. See, Mary's not the only former teacher around. Okay, so this is the area of mostly North Dakota, but you can see it goes down to South Dakota, over into Montana, and up into Canada, where the Bakken crude comes from. The Bakken crude oil is what's in all of those DOT 111s that we see downtown. That's what's in there, and this is where it's from. The area of the United States and Canada where it's from. Now, the Bakken is fracked. We're here in New York. We're familiar with fracking vis-a-vis natural gas, but out there they're fracking, same process, for oil. And what happens out there is that they don't have pipelines to bring the natural gas that comes with the oil to market, so that most all of the natural gas gets flared into the atmosphere, and it's hugely contributing to our greenhouse gas, to climate change. I can't begin to get my head around 5.2 trillion to 6 trillion. That just totally meaningless, except it's a really, really large number that's being invented as a result of our fracking for oil out there. Now, if from space, this is from space, you can see the lights from these flares of the previous picture I just showed you, and compare it to a place where people actually live, like Minneapolis, St. Paul. You can see, okay, there's this much light from all those people in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and over here in the Bakken, where almost nobody lives, there's a comparable amount of light from the extreme amount of flares that is going on. In addition, the international, it's not program, I forget. Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change out of the UN, thank you, Grace, has recently reported that over the 20-year time frame, methane, which is CH4, has a global warming potential of 86 times. Folks, this is a big number. 86 times that of carbon dioxide. Now this chart shows you the decline curve in the fracking process. The fracking process is huge. We explode the rocks, we get the oil or gas from the rocks, from the shale, and then basically they have to move the well to a next site in order to do the process all over again, because the decline rate is huge. This is 12 months out. After a month, you can see how much it declines. So they can't stay in place with these wells. They have to continually open up new wells and new wells and new wells and new wells. And that's what it looks like. I mean, all over the place. Wells, wells, and more wells. Now, I won't stay too long on this chart, but I think it's important for people to know that back in the 20th century, we could get oil and gas fairly easily. We didn't need to do this high-volume hydrofracking thing. We could, I mean, I'm exaggerating, we basically stick straw in the ground and it would come out. I'm exaggerating, but, you know, it was easy. It took far less time, far less money, far less equipment, far less sophistication. And so, and we got the easy to get stuff. Now, the 21st century, we're down in this area. And it takes a lot more money, a lot more time, a lot more equipment, and a lot more money. Heaven forbid, should we get down to this area to here, because the planet would, be burning up by then. So now I'm going to talk about the growth of the shipments of this crude by rail. Before fracking, basically 2005 to 2009, you can see the number of shipments of crude by rail. Okay, it hardly registers. 2013, 425,000 carloads of crude oil. So I don't know anything that grows like that, but the crude oil shipments grow like this. And here's a year by year. It's the same graph, but this is year by year, and you can see the hockey stick effect. It says 8,358% increase. So that's huge. Now this is, of course, it's logical, the rail accidents involving the crude oil would also look like a hockey stick. So this one goes up to 2012, and then just yesterday, the New York Times came out with a report that in 2013, which is not in the graph, it's up here, there were 116 episodes. Not all these episodes were explosions like we've seen 5 times in the past 9 months. A lot of them are spills, and other derailments that have happened. Fortunately, we haven't had 116 explosions. You saw the fiery flames, but for some reason this picture is poignant to me because there's nothing more solid than an engine of a rail car. It's just really what can possibly destroy an engine? But this Bakken crude, when it explodes, destroys the engine. Now, this is a map of Albany, and John told us a little bit about the trains coming in here. This comes down from, the CP comes down from Montreal through Plattsburgh along Lake Champlain into the global terminal. And from the west, it comes from the Bakken, North Dakota, over through Ohio and Pennsylvania, and then into Buffalo, Rochester, all along the Erie Canal, down to the Selkirk that John was talking about, and then up into Buckeye Terminal. And then some of it stays in the rail cars and goes down to New York City, and others the tankers get put on the barges and the ships to go down the Hudson. Houston on the Hudson is Dr. Fred Millar's nickname for us. Andy, did I see you? Are you here? That's Andy Arthur. I've been showing his map all over the place. Andy, do you want to tell people about your map?
Yes, it's a map with buffers from the railroads in the capital region. One buffer is 200 meters, which equal, or can't read. Yeah. It's like 200 meters is the orange buffer. I think the yellow, orange buffer is. Orange/yellow buffer is 850, which is a half mile. The 200 meters, the serious damage. The 850 is the blown out windows type damage.
Okay, so in the orange, I mean, basically, I don't like to be too crude, but people get vaporized in the orange and then they just get injured in the yellow, something like that. So it's not fun. It's not very.
It's just short of the governor's mansion.
And here's Andy's second map. Okay, so Andy, this map I'm looking at poor little Schenectady. This is Schenectady. Okay, hardly anybody's safe in Schenectady. Just circling around. Here we are over in Albany. Now, I I don't want to get too much into science, but I think this is pretty interesting. I'm not a scientist, I don't have a technical background. But this Bakken crude oil, they've been trying to keep this a secret from us. They don't want to share the oil producers and the railroads. They don't want to share information with us. But the scientists have plugged on, and they found out that the propane content, this is gas propane, that is in the oil is significantly more than regular crude oil. And the supposition here is because of this volatile gas that's within the oil, it's bulking it up, that's why, or at least one of the reasons why it's so explosive. And then the volatility also has to do with the pressure itself in pounds per square inch. And so this is normal oil over here, but you can see the Bakken from North Dakota is significantly more of pressure than the regular crude. So I'll show you a few pictures of activism. Like Vivian said, you know, we've been working with her and with other groups, and so to make noise. And this is the first press conference that Vivian and Dorsey and President Carolyn McLaughlin organized about the trains coming in here to Albany. And that's Bill Law of the Mount Hope Neighborhood Association speaking at this press conference. This is January 24th of this year. And this was a fantastic meeting that Vivian and Dorsey and President McLaughlin organized. Maybe some of you were there. It was January 27th, just a few days after the press conference. I just thought that it was a remarkable gathering of folks. I don't know what you thought, Vivian, but you know, it was really, there were people from Selkirk, there were people from Waterloo, there were people from the South End, and there were people from all over, and Mary was there, and, you know, it was just a very, very dynamite meeting. And this is what we were all preparing for, as I feel like we literally forced the DEC and Global to put on a forum for us. And maybe some of you were at this as well. This is the press conference outside the forum that we had beforehand, and then you can see inside. Now, Giffen Elementary School holds 500 seats, and it was, I'd say at least 400 of those seats were filled. So I don't remember too much what DEC and Global said, but we all said a lot, and it was it was a really good show.
They didn't say very much.
They did, yeah, it was pretty good. And this is the first protest that PAWS put on by itself. We're a new organization. We just formed in January. So one very, very cold March day in an ice storm. We've got sick and tired of the DEC not reversing its negative declaration, not putting in an environmental impact statement, not doing an environmental justice analysis. So we trotted down there and we had a protest. Every Friday, we do something called Flyer Fridays, and from noon till 1 o'clock, we're out on some street corner in Albany. We're handing out flyers, and here's Diana Wright getting signatures on a petition from Brian Clenahan, who's Albany County legislator. And this is just today. Justin McCullough, the guy who did the first video, it was an accidental meeting. This is Frank Sullivan, myself. We're collecting petitions, handing out flyers at the food court, not the court, the food trucks down by the Capitol. And Justin came along and he took our picture. So, you probably think I never changed my shirt.
Why?
Why would I change my shirt? So going back in time a little bit, we've been working with environmental advocates in New York, and one really nice thing is, okay, the environmental advocates in New York, the Sierra Club, and a lot of professional environmental groups have kind of adopted pause, and so so they organized it, but we showed up with our signs. And then you probably heard of the explosion down in Virginia last week. It happened on the 30th of April. So the next day we went down to Ezra Prentice that Vivian was talking about. They have a playground there. It's really, the playground is disgusting. It's disgusting that those oil trains, you can see them. You can see them right there, okay? It's that close. Yeah, you pick up a pebble and you toss it and it hits one of those things. It's disgusting. So we were out there protesting that. And then I want to leave you with jobs, because everybody talks about jobs and jobs are important. All right. So which job do you want? Do you want this job up here, solar installing, or do you want this job down here? Plus, that the City University of New York has done a study on this, and they found that for every $1 million that we're going to invest in energy production, you get, for that $1 million, you get 6.5 jobs in fracking here, okay? For green jobs here, you get twice as many, 13 jobs. And if you want to go into building retrofits or public transportation, 26 plus. So that's it, and you have your postcards, and I hope that you can fill out some time and tell the governor what you think, okay?
So we now have a good over half an hour for question and answers. I'll be 1, 2, 3, I've got it right here.
Okay, the gentleman from the Railroad Workers Union mentioned that even with a superior rail car, wouldn't survive a 50-mile-an-hour crash. But the problem is, I think Global has it now today do recognize that these cars they're using are inferior, prone to explosion, that there is another type of car they could use, but they're not going to put it on quite yet. But what happens is with the inferior car, any type of accident, no matter how small, will be a tragedy like the one in Quebec. That wasn't a train going 50 miles an hour. That was a train where the brakes came off and was sliding down the hill, not that fast. And we had these people that died and the whole community polluted. So I think Global, by not putting immediately these better cars that would be safer and other accidents, is showing complete consideration to the rest of us. Thank you.
I had to have a conversation about this issue with a number of people, and they come back with, well, you see, we should have let them build the pipelines. If we had pipelines, we wouldn't have to worry about these trains. And my feeling is we should leave the oil in the ground and deal with climate change. So I wondered if any of you up there would want to say what you think.
I agree. I mean, that's the problem. The real danger probably from this oil is not that it's going to explode, but what it's going to do to the planet. Whether it's tar sands or Bakken crude or Saudi Arabia or wherever. In the long run, that's the biggest issue.
I can speak to that. I had a person asked me about that, said, well, we should do the pipelines then. So I did a little bit of research. There's a heck of a lot more accidents with the pipelines, a lot more spills with the pipelines than there are with the trains, which is pretty egregious. And they want to put in the Pilgrim pipeline to take the crude oil from Albany to Linden, New Jersey, to put it on ships there. Of course, after it's all been heated by Global and Albany. That's starting to be their line. They just put out a line yesterday saying this is an alternative to the train. So they're going to be playing construction with it.
I think you probably answered my question.
Okay.
If the accidents were happening
when the trains would roll into a park. Now, that one train rolled. The other accidents were the trains rolling or were they stationary? They were rolling. They were rolling. So what's the problem with the rolling?
The Quebec accident, that train could have been going 50 miles an hour. It was going at a considerable rate of speed. It was a long grade down to that town.
Thank you, John. Susan, and then,
Could you speak a little louder?
sure.
Comment and a question. There was a issue of Trains magazine about 2 months ago that had quite a long article on the transportation of oil by rail, and that had some discussion about where it goes from and to. And it's my understanding that based on what refinery they're taking it to and so forth, even if the Keystone Pipeline were built, some of it will be going by rail anyway, just because of where it's, where it's going to for refining. But the question was, DEC has finally posed some questions to Global, fairly lengthy letter asking some questions. And I don't know if there's any projection of when Global might actually answer that. I have not seen anything about Global having answered it. The end of the comment period is coming up, I think, on June 2nd. And I was wondering if anyone has heard anything about when Global might be anticipated to answer that, or if there might be another extension of the comment period.
Dorsey and I met with DEC about 2 weeks ago, and we spoke to them about that letter that they had sent to Global. The problem with the letter is when they sent it, they didn't give them a deadline. They didn't tell them we want to answer by this date. So they had to then call Global and say, we expect an answer from you by this date. And that would have been about a week ago. Whether they received an answer or not, I have not heard that they have received an answer. But the problem was, again, they did not, I don't know why it's like they have a bad child and they're afraid to discipline that child. It is. I mean, that's the only way I can think of it is, this is my little bad child I've allowed to do what they wanted to do and have temper tantrums, and now I don't want to be the bad guy and discipline them. And to me, that's the behavior that Global is having for whatever reason with DEC.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to, I agree completely with Trudy, which is the only way to move this oil, the only way to do safely with it is keep it in the ground.
Yeah.
But holding that aside for a moment, you had mentioned something, sorry, I can't remember your... Vivian, thank you. You had mentioned something about you don't want to give the signal that you're closing New York down for business, but something I read about this in the New York Times, I think, about Albany's role here. They were saying something to the effect that a surprisingly small number of jobs and money is actually coming back into the city. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, we have 100% of the risk and 2% of the benefit. We have none of the benefit. And especially the people that are right there, right on the front line, they have no benefits. When we did have the occasion, the one occasion, to speak directly to Global, to ask them about jobs, there weren't any. Well, we have about 15 employees. Well, is there room for growth? Is there room for residents here? There isn't. So, and when I say that we're open for business, people have said, well, what do you want to do? Are you going to close the port down? No, I don't want to close the port down. I want the port to be safe. So if we are open for business, that's what I mean by open for business. But there are no jobs involved in this, not for that are going to benefit our communities.
I wonder if we know what the status of there's a moratorium on the facilities to heat for oil at the port, and I wonder if anybody has any information on how long that moratorium will be in place?
You mean that was done by the county executive?
Yeah.
Well, right now, we don't even have to worry about that, because the EPA has said to DEC, you will do this. And until that's done, until they satisfy what the EPA has said, nothing can be done. Everything has to stop. So we're happy.
In terms of the expansion.
Right, right, yeah.
Not the present
not
trains
the
that are
trains,
driving,
right.
the
They
expansion.
can't build anything else or do anything new until they satisfy them. And we're happy about it.
This is a question I've had for a really long time. I confess I'm ignorant, except that I believe I read that all these pipelines, all this crude oil that's coming, subjecting us to so much danger, and it is refined, I believe, in Texas and other places. Ultimately, that oil is not staying in the United States. It is, I understand, it's going to foreign places. So I feel like we're vehicles for this oil and will not benefit from it. And I'm just wondering if somebody could help clarify that for me.
Some people have been calling it Saudi America because it's like, it might become a resource colony. I don't know if it's named for it. We will be retaining some of it for our use, but it will be exorbitant for us because once they start exporting it, they start exporting it to Asia, which pays like $6 or $7 more a barrel than Europe, which pays $10 a barrel or whatever. Then, yeah, the price is going to go way up for us, and we don't benefit. And if we don't stop it, but yes, but what I understand.
I teach at safe colleges, and I want to make just a brief comment because my students and I deal with a lot of these issues when we talk about them. And, you know, I'm incredibly supportive of working against this transport of this crude oil and these different sort of issues. But one of the things that I feel is really important, and it's been important for my students, we raise some larger questions because there's no question this stuff has to be stopped. But there's so much that has to be stopped. You know, news this week in Oklahoma, they have unusual earthquake pattern. In a state that doesn't have earthquake. Why? Oh God, who knows? It's a state with more fracking than most everywhere else, right? And climate change continues to move, and so, you know, it's sort of like this is a part, and we have to oppose every one of these things. This is a part of a very large, rolling environmental disaster, and everywhere behind it are the corporations who are resisting, who are profiting, who are pushing, and it's raising a certain question. And frankly, and I think we have to, as we do stuff in terms of resisting, we have to raise the big question, and that is, frankly, is the Earth going to survive capitalism? Is the Earth going to survive? The current thrust of corporations, the resistance, the, you know, at best, agnostic non-action of the federal government. You know, and I think we have to sort of work within that. And I don't know the answer to that because I really don't know if we and the Earth are going to survive capitalism with its expansion and everything we see, because, you know, it has adapted before. But what I do know is we're not going to survive the current capitalism. The people who run these energy corporations, the people who run these financial corporations, they are going to kill us. So it seems to me as we do this reform activity, what we have to keep in mind is we have to find a way to bring to bear the most rigid and powerful restrictions on corporate behavior in terms of the environment, in terms of finance and so forth, if we are to survive not only in the long term, but even the medium term. So, you know, I think that's part of our struggle. We want to stop those damn trains coming down 787, but there's this bigger question we have to keep pushing, and we have to raise it. Because in this country, raising anti-capitalist ideas is supposed to be a bad thing, but there's a whole lot of folks now who are really open to thinking.
Correct.
What you said is absolutely right, and that is that's the biggest frustration for me personally, because it's so apparent when you walk into the room, you try to sit down and have a conversation. Their bottom line is $1, and our bottom line is lives, the lives of people. We have actually had Global say to us, well, there's no emissions from this oil. What health risk? What? So no, it's all contained in the drain. So we're supposed to believe that those goods, but they're selling us that nothing is escaping, that there's no health risk to living right across the street or right out, walking out your back door and having a big oil. The diesel fumes alone is enough to give me a migraine. So let alone the rest of the stuff that's in there. So you're absolutely right, but I can tell you that this girl is gonna fight this with the last breath in my body. I will not rest until something is done. I don't care, I have asked over and over, and I intend to have a very long conversation with this intelligent man. He is my newest hero because he has information on the railroads. I want to know, why is it they can't move those trains and run them through non-residential areas? As a start, I would rather they didn't run them at all, because I'd like for this country to survive long enough for my grandchildren to prosper. But at the rate we're going, I'm with you. I don't know what you're doing. But I'm with you.
Let's see, that lady back there in the straight ship, fracking for the oil, and they're burning off the natural gas.
Yes.
All at the same time, they're trying to frack the
House is about from here to here, from the track. And very close to the track, like driveways here, a little bit, whatever the safer model of train is. And maintenance is very high. And it was a mixture. There was about 27 crude oil trains. There were a couple of hydrochloric acid trains. There was some sodium hydroxide, all mixed together. You know, a few crude oil trains, then some just regular freight, then a little sulfuric acid. And I mean, it was a wide range of things. And I thought, well, who decided to put all of those things together on one train?
Well, I don't know. There are certain rules about how you set up a train with dangerous cargoes. For example, usually you have to have a certain number of non-dangerous cars, like box cars or whatever, between the locomotive and the first dangerous segment, and so on. They space them out. And you can look that up. You can look at media stuff like that. But like I said, I mean, I'll go back again. I'm kind of obsessed about this. Is that, if it stays on the track, it's not going to bother you. But there's all sorts of things that can make it not stay on the track. For example, in my line of work, which is locomotive repair, one of the least technical jobs would be changing the oil in the traction motors. You take a plug out, you drain the oil, and you fill it back up again. When I was representing my local as president, I had a guy who got hauled upstairs because supposedly he didn't refill the oil in those traction motors, and that train derailed. And we got him off with a timeout, but it's simple stuff like that. If it's not done, you can end up with a derailment. And I would just further add that one of the issues we faced has come up recently on my side of the rail industry, but before I retired, was the stretching out of a 92-day maintenance cycle, because they're justifying basically a quickie flashlight inspection in one 92-day interval, rather than bringing it into the shop, changing the oil, running it down the production line, everybody looking at it all over the place. Because, well, there's lots of computers on these locomotives now, and you can monitor them. But that's not, you're not gonna see a coupler that's about to break or a draft gear that's wrong with a quick flashlight inspection. So there again, the industry is always pushing to stretch everything out as much as they can to save the cost. You need to be aware of that, and vigilance has to be maintained. The problem railroad workers have in this whole situation, in terms of our safety issues and the things that we see, is that there's only about 150,000 to 200,000 railroad workers in this industry that moves 40% of the freight. We don't have a whole lot of numbers, so it's without the public chiming in to help us out, we don't get that far.
Okay, and then I want to point out that this man, Chris, John, and Dennis.
Is anyone addressing the water shipments? If that spills
it's very difficult to extract. Going down our river, that's another thing that we should be looking at.
Sometimes people get confused between what's coming in on the DOT 111s, which we think, we're pretty sure, John, you can correct me, that it's the Bakken crude that I showed you the map of, all right? Now, the KXL, for the most part, the pipeline is about the Alberta tar sands, okay? So, so it's easy, you know, they're all out west, it's easy to get confused, but the Alberta tar sands doesn't flow. And the reason why, that we think, nobody's telling us anything, but the logical reason we think about the expansion, Global asked for the boilers at the port, is because now, for the first time, they want to heat the Alberta tar sands so that they can get it out of the car and onto the barge. And if that were to happen, and there was a spill, then that very, very heavy crude from the Alberta tar sands, that sinks to the bottom and it's really impossible to clean up. I'm not saying that the Bakken crude is easy to clean up, but at least it flows.
I don't know what else, I don't know how much to add to this, except to say that I really agree with Trudy and this gentleman here from Sage College, and I really appreciate the work that PAWS is doing, and I'm sorry I haven't been actively involved. I've been on the sidelines cheering you on and just dealing with too much other work, but I really want to strategize with folks. I think we have, you know, I don't want to, I feel like there's got to be lots of ways that we resist this. And, you know, I signed a vow that I would fight fracking in New York, you know, that I would take time out and put my body on the line if they were going to start really fracking in New York State. But obviously, if the fracking that's going on in the country is affecting everybody in this room and in this country, right? It doesn't matter what state we're in. It's really having an impact everywhere, right? So at the same time, I'm more radical, and that's like what I know how to do is like go into civil disobedience. There's other things like legal, like getting our attorneys and working with structures like the mayor's office. Like, is the mayor? You would maybe could speak to that. I'm sure that Kathy Sheehan is on board with resisting this, but I'm wondering what our tactics could be as a city to just say, stop this nonsense. Whereas as a city, we are opposed to this, and as citizens, can we mobilize each other to support her in that stance?
Our mayor she is actively involved, and she is looking at ways of, she actually sent a letter to DEC, or to our planning board, that said to them, I want you to declare a positive declaration, which would have superseded the DEC's negative declaration. So when she did that, Global said, okay, we'll just do it on our existing property. So you don't have any authority here. And the unfortunate part for us is, as a city, which it blows my mind. I don't know who wrote this and why and how, but we have actually no say-so over our own port. And for me, I'm a new politician, so I don't know. But it just makes me like, why? How could you set up a charter that allows them to just do whatever they want and we have no input? But I will say the good thing, there's one good thing that has come out of all of this. And the one good thing is this. We have a great movement on this. When Dorsey and when Dominic Cavallaro brought this to our attention and the community started to come in and speak to us, we took action. But we didn't take action alone because immediately there was Sandy, there was the Sierra Club, and all the other environmental groups, but not only them, it's the community. And our community, we are, in talking to the Sierra Club, this community, when looking at communities all over the country that are affected by these oil tankers coming to their cities and small towns, we are the most vocal and the most active community out there. Now, I'm sure in Lynchburg, they've mobilized and are probably doing more than we have, but we, and fortunately, I believe, have had the foresight to be proactive so that prayerfully we don't have to be reactive. So our mayor is involved, and the city is looking at ways to stop this, but the input of our community, there's power in it. And we just have to continue to stand our ground and say, we don't want it, it can go away.
I got John, then this man here, and Betty.
I just wanted to say, when we started addressing the larger picture, one of the things that environmentalists and academics usually leave out is that the United States military, bar none, is the largest degrader of the environment in the world today. And we need to address the militarism along with something else, a vague term like capitalism. We need to address how the silent hand of the market behind it is the silent fist, which is the U.S. military. And if we don't address that, we are avoiding the largest part of the problem.
Yeah, by the way, there's a green movement in the military. They're going to get solar-powered phones. But anyway, a couple things. I read one article where it did say that the new cars they have, the ones that are safer, are going to be heavier, and our 100-year-old infrastructure, we may be just taking off on one end and adding on the other. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure of that bridge downtown, I'm pretty sure the stone pilings were made to carry troops to the Civil War, because the wooden bridge, they look the same on that. So the original bridge is 150 years old. So I don't know, if you get a heavier car and you don't have the infrastructure to support it, they were saying, we may be just going from the frying pan into the fire. And the other thing is, I wonder just in general, the idea of one person driving a train, like in New York City. I'm sure one person could drive a 777 or something like that, which would you get on a plane with only one pilot, The idea that you don't have a human backup anywhere, the one person is driving any train that's multiple cars long with people on it, like in the Bronx, or large amounts of oil, but there's just the constant cutting corners is the thing that disturbs me so much. They're constantly cutting corners, they're, and you obviously cannot trust, like you said, do the need to make as much profit as possible. You can't trust them.
Yeah, that's very true in terms of the weight question. And you should be aware that members of Railroad Workers United who work around the country, we have people in the Northwest and the Dakotas and everywhere else, have noted that the railroads are adding cars to the trains, making them longer, probably because of the increased traffic and not, wanting to move as many cars as possible, as few people and locomotives as possible. And that, of course, is stressing the infrastructure. And just on the single-person crew issue, I really would urge you, again, railroadworkersunited.org. The lead article is one of my friend Ron Kamikow, who's an Amtrak engineer out in Nevada. And he goes so exhaustively the question of why a single-person crew is a bad idea. And there's much more to it than simply, well, you ought to have somebody else to keep them awake in the cab. There's much more to it in terms of the issue. It's a very good article. I highly recommend it.
Daniel McKay, I'm on the town board in New Scotland, and I'm happy to work a bit with Sandy on this issue since it really first came to the public attention. Everything here is connected, and our work is bound together. And whether it's focused on what's happening in the Second Ward, in the South End, whether it's focused on the railroad down from the north on CP through Manans and Coes, whether it's everything coming into Buckeye Partners, which is coming in via CSX, which means Gilland, New Scotland, Voorheesville, and then Bethlehem into Selkirk. It's all connected. The idea of there is no way to ship this material by rail and not have it affect densely populated communities. The rail network in this country ties densely populated communities together. Another little piece of this is the high-speed rail, the development of Amtrak's high-speed rail initiative in upstate New York. They're running side by side and on CSX freight rail tracks between Albany and Bethlehem. Most of the plans to upgrade high-speed rail are about adding additional passing sidings, et cetera, to build higher speeds for passenger rail side by side with existing freight transport, which means existing freight traffic of this type. So you're imagining a scenario where you're actually putting higher speed trains in the exact same corridor, freight corridor as these shipments. Vivian, this is the first time I've been to several forums. You're doing extraordinary work on this. We appreciate so much what you've dedicated to this effort, and you're pulling us along behind you. Sandy, same thing. You're the complete dedication to this issue, and the volume of email.
Some people don't appreciate that, Dan.
I've seen that. I mean, you are pulling us along with you, and we are bound together in this work. And it's not a Port of Albany issue. It's not a second ward issue. It is a capital region issue. There are multiple rail routes through our communities. All of them are being used. If these trains are going further east, they're crossing the Hudson River in Mechanicville. At some point, the only other crossing of the Hudson River for freight in the northeast is the CSX line adjacent to the I-90 spur, again through Selkirk Yards. We are just on a very damp, unfortunate part of the map for these types of shipments in this day and age in our current energy environment. And getting rid of the risk is not just a transshipment issue for the Port of Albany. It's not just a through shipment issue through Selkirk Yards. It's about changing the energy environment that we're dealing with. And so everything that's been added into this discussion tonight is entirely appropriate. And I just appreciate not only what you've introduced from the panel, but what people have said in the audience. I know it feels big, but the solution really does have to be on that comprehensive scale.
This woman in the blue, and then you can do that.
I have some factual questions to get this clear in my mind. I know that there is legal action involving the DEC, first public comment, and they're going to slow down that ETA, they can't do this expansion. But I wonder if there's any legal action or action, in pushing the DEC around what's already been allowed in the increase in the number of shipments through this area. Because in my mind, that's got to be stopped. And is there any way to address that we know about in terms of legal action? Because it's endangering the Hudson River, it's endangering populations through a large city.
Do we know? Well, we are looking at it because their permits allow them to transport a certain amount or whatever in a certain product. So where do they lie? They lied in Oregon. Oregon actually sued them for lying about what they were transporting and how much. So we have said to the DEC, we think they told you a lie. So we've asked them to look into that. So far they have not. But if they have lied to the DEC, then there is room for legal actions.
Well, I'm wondering, is there any way we require them to use that amount if it is too much? To see it stop.
We are looking at everything. We are looking at we want it to go away completely. Now, I don't know if we can make it go away completely, but we are certainly going to try. And if we can reduce it, we're looking at everything. Every action we go down, we go. And even when we're not out in public meetings, I spend hours on the phone. I'm glad I really do love Dorsey and Carolyn because I spend more time with them than I do with my grandchildren. So, and those are people I'm crazy about. So we're always on the phone trying to strategize and come up with the next step. I don't know yet the answer to that, but that's something that we are sure.
I think we're all just incredibly grateful for all that you're doing, but I wanted to just put one more piece out there, which is
only answer is to change the way all of us live. That's not an answer. And so I'm hoping, that the city government, including Delmar, that there can be proactive policies to start reducing our use of oil here. Kathy Sheehan, who's been kind of strict of her ability to regulate and say, well, okay, we're going to put as much solar here in Albany as we can, and maybe as a good reason for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My question's aligned with yours. Is there some way that we could demand that the EPA shut the whole operation down since DEC has not done their job properly? Why is it continuing? It's, they have not done their job.
I agree. The problem, the issue is that there are two separate things happening. And the one is the permit request to build the heating furnaces so that they can bring up to residents. And the other one is the fact that they're already moving through. And I have to honestly say that, and thankfully I was sworn in January 1st, but somewhere we were asleep on that. They happened right before our very eyes. One morning we woke up and went, where did all this oil come from? So, we were not paying as close enough attention to what was going on in our backyard. So it's there, and the only thing we can do now is to relook at it under a magnifying glass to see, what it is they're saying on paper, and to see if we can find if what they're telling us is really what they're doing. So we are looking at that, because if we can find, if one of us finds out that what's on this paper is not what's going on those tracks, they will be hearing.
Yeah. I have to apologize to Betty.
No, that's okay. I think we have to remember that we have strength in numbers, of course, and that there are a lot of communities that these trains are rolling through. If you look at Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo. So I think we need to, and certainly Plattsburgh, and Sandy went up to Plattsburgh just recently and spoke in a forum up there and shared her experiences and her knowledge with those people up in Plattsburgh. So this is a very wide-ranging issue, and I think that we need to remember that there are people in places far from us that are going through the same thing that we're going through. Only I think we maybe have gotten more attention. We've certainly been heard on the West Coast, and I hear they've noticed us in North Carolina. So we have to keep doing what we're doing, because I think it's good, and we have to keep spreading the word. So let us think in a wider way than just Albany, but we certainly need to keep our attention on Albany. And secondly, I think that we need to remember that there are ways that we can choke the flow, choking the flow of money. There's something called divestment, and a number of organizations, especially I would like to point to the student organizations that are cropping up all over the place, that are asking their universities and their colleges to take the money away from these big corporations that are doing the nasty stuff that we're experiencing here in Albany. So the way that you can help is to put pressure on the people who are connected with your universities closest to you, whether it's SUNY or St. Rose or RPI. Call them up, ask them how much of their portfolio they have in oil and natural gas. You might get a long silence, and probably would. But if you do your homework, I think you could find out that a lot of these good public universities and a lot of private ones are invested in fossil fuels. I would say to you, take their money away. And you have the power to do it. All of you here tonight, multiply yourselves 1,000 times. If you can do that, or even several hundred, you'll start to see the results of your pressure. So I urge you, when you leave here tonight, to get active. Join PAWS.
join one of the other environmental organizations, but do something, act, because that's the solution. You need to act. And thanks for coming tonight.
I want to just tell you that actually this fight that we're having, it made international.
Oh, really?
Charlene Benton, who is a woman who lives...
Louder, please.
Louder.
I can't hear you.
Charlene Benton, a woman that lives in Ezra Prentice, she's the president of their neighborhood association. Al Jazeera Television called and said, we'd like to do a story on what you're doing. And we sent them to Miss Benton, and they did a story on her, and it made international news. So our fight is an international fight. So when we fight big.
When this lady was talking, she was saying about applying more pressure. Is the city pressuring the local to insist on more insurance to try to break them financially to stop doing the oil shipping?
You know, that is not something that we've done, but thank you for that idea.
She deserves credit, she gave me that idea.
That is not something that we've done.
I can, I've spoken with Pat Fay and John McDonald recently, and actually emailed, not spoken. But in any case, they tell me that there's a bill in the works for the for bonding and for insurance of both Global and Buckeye. And I think that if all of you went home and emailed them, we're getting to the end of the legislative season. So if all of you went home and emailed them saying that, you know, you were informed tonight and this was discussed and you think that this is an excellent idea, I'm not saying that they're sitting back on this, but I am saying that to hear encouragement from all of us that they've told me it's in the works anyway, but you know, that little bit of encouragement might actually make it happen.
Okay, we really want people to start reading out stuff. So, I want to say just one more question, and I'd like to give maybe one final statement.
One back here. Back here, right here. This man had his hand up for about 10 minutes.
I saw it, I didn't see it. He had his hand up.
So he's not raising his hand now. You want to ask your question?
I'm sorry.
Well, this gentleman mentioned that there's a military-industrial complex, and we in this community were sort of pro-environment, peaceniks. But I want to point out that we could probably get some help. I read in the paper today that the budget for the military is now $600 billion a year. So there's a big group of people and a lot of resources there. And we've just come through over a decade of paranoia about, airplane can be a flying bomb with 9/11. So maybe the resources of the internal security and the idea of fighting terrorism could be brought to bear on not having these trains come through town because it's dangerous, because we're paranoid about terroristic threat.
I would like, Tuesday, May 13th, the Albany Common Council is having a joint public health and safety meeting at 200 South Pearl Street at the Housing Authority building. The Albany County Sheriff, the Chief of Police, and the Fire Department Chief will be there to talk about public safety, and that Dr. Crescetti and one from New York, one from Albany County, and the other one from from SUNY. They'll be there to talk about the public health implications, and there will be other people there giving information. So it is May 13th, Tuesday the 13th at 5:30. So if you can make that, I know that room is already going to be full, but we'll just squeeze in and get the information. But I want to thank you all for the work that you do, because truly, you know, my role, I used the word politician earlier, and I never liked that word. I consider myself to be an elected official and a servant of the people, and that is why I was elected, to serve the people. So being a servant of the City of Albany, Second Ward, it's not just there that I stop because we have many neighbors. So I'm a servant of people here as well. So it has been a pleasure working with you side by side and being a voice for you when you need me to be. So I appreciate all the help and everything that you do, and let's just continue to make it happen.
Oh, well, just again, remember, railroads employ people, they employ people to run the trains, they employ people to fix the trains. There are all these issues that I raised and more. RailroadWorkersUnited.org, check it out, and support the movement against single-person crews, remote control, and all the rest of it. Let's keep the trains on the tracks and out of your homes.
Yeah.
The only thing I have to say is thank you for coming. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Trudy. And please fill out your postcards and mail.
And there's an email list back there that Trudy's holding up. If anybody wants to get on the email list or any other email. Thank you so much.